What happens when one of Britain's most beloved talk show hosts comes face to face with a guest who refuses to play by the rules? It only took one comment about royal protocol for everything to completely fall apart. Jonathan Ross had seen it all in his decades on television. Celebrities having meltdowns, guests storming off, awkward silences that stretched for what felt like hours. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what was about to unfold on this particular evening. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement. The cameras were rolling. The lights were perfect. Everything seemed normal. Jonathan, ever the professional, flashed his signature smile as he prepared to welcome his guest onto the stage. Meghan Markle walked out in a stunning designer gown, waving to the crowd with practiced precision. "So welcome, Jonathan said, standing up to greet her. "So wonderful to have you here tonight." Meghan sat down, crossing her legs and arranging herself just so. "Thanks for having me, Jonathan." The first few minutes went smoothly enough. Jonathan asked about her recent projects, her charitable work, the usual talk show fare. Meghan answered with rehearsed responses, the kind of answers she'd given 1,000 times before. But Jonathan could sense something was off. There was a tension in the air, a stiffness to her smile. "So," Jonathan continued, trying to lighten the mood, "I have to ask, what's it like adjusting to life in the public eye? I imagine it's quite different from what you were used to before." Meghan's expression changed instantly. Her smile vanished. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jonathan looked confused. "I just meant, the level of attention must be quite intense." "Are you suggesting I wasn't famous before?" Meghan shot back, her voice rising slightly. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jonathan laughed nervously, trying to diffuse the situation. No, of course not. I'm just saying the spotlight is different now, that's all." Meghan stared at him coldly. "I think you need to be more careful with your questions, Jonathan." Jonathan blinked, genuinely taken aback. In all his years of hosting, he'd never been spoken to like this on his own show. "I apologize if that came across wrong," he said diplomatically. "Let's move on, shall we?" But Meghan wasn't ready to move on. "You know what the problem is with people like you," she said, leaning forward in her chair. You think you can just say whatever you want and get away with it." The studio fell silent. You could hear a pin drop. The audience members looked at each other, unsure of what was happening. Jonathan maintained his composure, though his eyebrows raised slightly. "I'm not sure what you mean by that," Jonathan said carefully. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean," Meghan replied. "This whole interview has been a setup from the start. Leading questions, subtle digs, trying to make me look bad." Jonathan shook his head slowly. "Meghan, I assure you, that's not what's happening here. These are standard questions I ask all my guests." "Standard?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "Right, because you ask everyone about how they're adjusting to fame, as if they're some kind of nobody who just stumbled into the limelight." The tension was becoming unbearable. Jonathan tried once more to salvage the interview. "Look, I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we talk about your upcoming projects instead?" Meghan rolled her eyes dramatically. "There you go again, trying to control the narrative. This is exactly what I was warned about." "Warned about?" Jonathan repeated, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Who warned you about me?" "People who know how this industry really works," Meghan said cryptically. "People who told me that hosts like you love to tear down successful women." Jonathan's face reddened slightly. He was done being polite. "Now hang on just a minute. I have never, in my entire career, tried to tear down anyone. I've had countless female guests on this show, and I've treated every single one of them with nothing but respect." "Oh, please," Meghan scoffed. "Spare me the outrage. You're all the same." The audience gasped audibly. This was crossing a line. Jonathan sat back in his chair, studying his guest with disbelief. "I'm not sure what show you think you're on," he said evenly, "but this isn't it." Meghan stood up suddenly, startling everyone in the studio. "You know what? I don't have to sit here and be insulted. Jonathan remained seated, his expression a mixture of confusion and frustration. Insulted? Meghan, I've been nothing but professional. You're the one who's been attacking me from the moment you sat down. Attacking you? Meghan's voice went up an octave. Are you serious right now? I'm calling out your behavior. And you're playing the victim? My behavior? Jonathan stood up now too, his voice firm but controlled. Let's be clear about what's happened here. I asked you a perfectly reasonable question about your life, and you immediately went on the offensive. I've tried multiple times to move the conversation forward, and you've continued to make accusations that have no basis in reality. Meghan pointed a finger at him. Don't you dare gaslight me on national television. The audience was completely silent now, transfixed by the car crash unfolding before them. Jonathan took a deep breath, clearly trying to keep his cool. I'm not gaslighting anyone, he said slowly. I'm simply stating facts. This interview has gone completely off the rails, and it's not because of anything I've done. Typical, Meghan muttered, shaking her head. Absolutely typical. What's typical? Jonathan asked, his frustration finally showing through. That I'm trying to do my job. That I'm trying to have a civil conversation with a guest who seems determined to turn everything into a confrontation. Meghan grabbed her microphone and started to remove it. I'm not doing this anymore. This whole thing is ridiculous. Jonathan held up his hands. Meghan, please, let's just take a breath and start over. We can forget everything that's happened and begin fresh. Start over? Meghan laughed harshly. So you can ambush me with more loaded questions? No thanks. Loaded questions? Jonathan's voice rose slightly despite his best efforts. I asked you about your life and your work. Those are the most basic questions any talk show host asks any guest. And there it is, Meghan said triumphantly, as if she'd proven some grand point. You're raising your voice at me now. Everyone saw that. Jonathan looked genuinely bewildered. You're standing up, taking off your microphone, and accusing me of terrible things. And I'm the bad guy for having a normal human reaction to all of this? You just don't get it, do you? Meghan said, fully removing her microphone now and dropping it on the chair. You represent everything that's wrong with this industry. Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, clearly at his wit's end. Meghan, I have no idea what I've done to deserve this. I really don't. But if you're determined to leave, I'm not going to stop you. Oh, how gracious of you, Meghan said sarcastically. The great Jonathan Ross gives me permission to leave my own interview. That's not what I meant, and you know it, Jonathan replied, his voice tired now. I'm just saying that if you're this unhappy being here, then maybe it's best if we end things now. Meghan turned to face the audience. You're all witnesses to this, she announced dramatically. Remember what happened here tonight. Jonathan looked at the camera, then back at Meghan, completely dumbfounded. Witnesses to what exactly? A guest having a meltdown for no apparent reason? No apparent reason? Meghan whirled back to face him. Are you actually serious right now? Yes, I'm serious, Jonathan exclaimed. You've been hostile from the beginning. You've twisted everything I've said. You've made accusations that make no sense. And now you're playing to the audience like you're some kind of victim. Meghan's eyes narrowed. How dare you call me hostile? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Jonathan paused, stunned by the question. I'm talking to a guest on my show who's currently having a very public breakdown. A breakdown? Meghan's voice was icy now. This is what you people do. You push and push and push. And then when someone finally stands up for themselves, you call it a breakdown. Stands up for themselves against what? Jonathan asked, genuinely confused. I've been trying to have a conversation with you. That's literally all I've been trying to do. A conversation? Meghan laughed again. Is that what you call it when you patronize someone for 20 minutes straight? Jonathan looked at the audience, been as if seeking confirmation that he wasn't going crazy. Several audience members looked back at him with sympathy. "I have not patronized you once," he said clearly. "Everything you've said has been patronizing," Meghan countered. "From your tone, to your questions, to your fake concern." "Fake concern?" Jonathan shook his head in disbelief. "When was I concerned? Fake or otherwise? We barely got started before you started attacking me." Meghan grabbed her purse from beside the chair. "I'm leaving. This is absolutely unacceptable." "By all means," Jonathan said, gesturing toward the exit, "if that's what you want to do." "See? There it is again!" Meghan pointed at him accusingly. That dismissive tone, that condescending attitude. Jonathan closed his eyes for a moment, clearly trying to center himself. When he opened them again, he spoke very carefully. "Meghan, I'm going to say this one last time. I have not been dismissive. I have not been condescending. I have been professional, patient, and respectful, even as you've spent this entire time attacking me for reasons I still don't understand." "You don't understand because you're part of the problem," Meghan said, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "You're so embedded in your privilege that you can't even see what you're doing." "My privilege?" Jonathan's eyebrows shot up. "This is my show. I've worked for decades to build my career. What does privilege have to do with anything that's happened here tonight?" "Everything," Meghan said simply. "It has everything to do with it." Jonathan spread his arms wide. "Then explain it to me, please. I genuinely want to understand what you're talking about." "I don't owe you an explanation," Meghan snapped. "I don't owe you anything." "You're right," Jonathan agreed. "You don't owe me anything. But you do owe this audience an explanation for why you've turned what should have been a pleasant conversation into whatever this is." Meghan turned to the audience again. "I came here in good faith," she announced. "I came here ready to have a real conversation. But instead, I was met with the same old tricks, the same old games." One brave audience member called out, "What tricks? He just asked about your life." Meghan's head snapped toward the voice. "You wouldn't understand," she said dismissively. Jonathan jumped in. "See, now you're being dismissive to an audience member who asked a fair question." "A fair question?" Meghan scoffed. "They're clearly on your side." "There are no sides," Jonathan exclaimed, his frustration finally bubbling over. "This isn't a competition. This isn't a battle. This was supposed to be a talk show interview." "Was supposed to be," Meghan repeated. "Exactly, but you ruined it with your agenda." "What agenda?" Jonathan practically shouted. "Please, tell me what my agenda is, because I'd love to know." "To make me look bad," Meghan said confidently. "To embarrass me. To tear me down." Jonathan stared at her for a long moment. "Meghan, I don't need to make you look bad. You're doing that all by yourself." The audience gasped again. Meghan's face turned red. "How dare you say that to me?" "How dare I?" Jonathan's voice was incredulous. "You've spent the last however many minutes accusing me of things I haven't done, insulting me, insulting my show, and now you're offended that I've finally stated the obvious?" "You're a bully," Meghan declared. "A bully hiding behind a smile in a nice suit." Jonathan laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "I'm a bully? I'm sitting here being verbally attacked on my own show, and I'm the bully?" "Yes," Meghan said firmly. "You are." "Unbelievable," Jonathan muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Meghan started walking toward the exit. "I hope you're proud of yourself." "Proud of what?" Jonathan called after her. "I haven't done anything." Meghan stopped and turned back one final time. "You've shown your true colors tonight, Jonathan. Everyone saw it." "The only thing everyone saw," Jonathan said, his voice steady now, "was a guest who came on my show looking for a fight and manufactured one out of thin air." "Manufactured?" Meghan's voice went shrill. "You think I manufactured this?" "Yes, I do," Jonathan said bluntly. I think you came here with a chip on your shoulder, determined to find offense in everything I said, and that's exactly what you did. Meghan's face was flushed with anger. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then enlighten me, Jonathan challenged. Give me one specific example of something I said that was offensive. Just one. Meghan opened her mouth, then closed it. She opened it again. Your whole attitude, she said finally. My attitude? Jonathan laughed again. That's not an example. That's a vague accusation. It's all I need to say, Meghan replied haughtily. No, it's not, Jonathan shot back. If you're going to accuse someone of being offensive, you should be able to point to specific words or actions. Otherwise, you're just making things up. I don't make things up, Meghan said through gritted teeth. Then prove it, Jonathan said. Tell me exactly what I said that was so terrible. Meghan stood there, silent, glaring at him. That's what I thought, Jonathan said quietly. You can't, because I didn't do anything wrong. I'm leaving, Meghan announced for what felt like the 10th time. Yes, you've said that several times now, Jonathan observed. Yet you keep standing there arguing with me. Because you won't stop attacking me, Meghan cried out. But attacking you? Jonathan looked genuinely astonished. Defending myself from false accusations is not the same as attacking you. To someone like you, everything is the same, Meghan said cryptically. Jonathan threw up his hands. What does that even mean? Someone like me? What am I like, Meghan? Privileged. Entitled. Used to getting your own way. Meghan listed off. I'm entitled? Jonathan's voice dripped with disbelief. You're the one who came on my show, started a fight for no reason, and then expected everyone to take your side despite all evidence to the contrary. If anyone here is entitled, it's not me. Meghan's eyes went wide. I cannot believe you just said that to me. Why not? Jonathan asked. It's true. You're impossible, Meghan said, shaking her head. Absolutely impossible. I'm impossible because I won't pretend you're right when you're clearly wrong? Jonathan questioned. That's not how reality works. Your reality, maybe, Meghan retorted, but not mine. There's only one reality, Jonathan said firmly. And in that reality, you came on my show, acted inappropriately, made baseless accusations, and are now trying to paint yourself as the victim. That's what actually happened here. Meghan took a step closer to him, her voice low and dangerous. You're going to regret this. Jonathan didn't flinch. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Meghan said coldly. Jonathan met her gaze steadily. Meghan, the only person who should have regrets about tonight is you. You had an opportunity to promote yourself, your work, whatever you wanted. Instead, you chose to create drama where none existed. I didn't create anything, Meghan insisted. You started this. By asking you a question about your life, Jonathan's voice was calm but firm. That's what started this, according to you. A normal, standard question that I've asked hundreds of guests before. It wasn't what you asked, Meghan said. It was how you asked it. How I asked it, Jonathan repeated flatly. And how exactly did I ask it? Like you were looking down on me, Meghan said. Jonathan sighed deeply. Meghan, I wasn't looking down on you. I was sitting across from you, asking a question. There was no hidden meaning, no secret agenda, no ulterior motive. That's what you say now, Meghan muttered. It's what I've been saying this entire time. Jonathan's patience was clearly at its limit. You're the one who's been reading things into my words that simply aren't there. Because I know how people like you operate, Meghan said. People like me, Jonathan repeated, his voice weary. You keep saying that. People like me. What does that mean? People in power who abuse it, Meghan said. Jonathan looked around the studio, at the cameras, at the audience, at his producers standing off to the side, looking completely shell-shocked. I'm a talk show host, Meghan. I ask people questions and try to make them laugh. That's my job. I'm not some evil puppet master. You say that, but your actions tell a different story, Meghan said. What actions? Jonathan demanded. Name one action I've taken tonight that was inappropriate. One. Meghan pursed her lips. Everything you've done has been inappropriate. That's not an answer. Jonathan was truly exasperated now. You're speaking in vague generalities because you know you don't have a leg to stand on. I know what I experienced, Meghan said stubbornly. You experienced a standard talk show interview, Jonathan stated clearly. That's all this was supposed to be. That's all it would have been if you hadn't decided to turn it into something else. Meghan shook her head slowly. You just don't get it. You never will. You're right about one thing, Jonathan said. I don't get it. I don't get how someone can come on a show, be treated with nothing but professionalism and respect, and then claim they're being victimized. Professionalism? Meghan laughed bitterly. Is that what you call this circus? I call this circus what you made it, Jonathan replied. I was trying to do my job. You were the one who turned it into a confrontation. Meghan started walking toward the exit again, this time with more determination. Goodbye, Jonathan. I hope you learned something tonight. Oh, I learned something, Jonathan called after her. I learned that some people are determined to be offended no matter what you do or say. Meghan paused at the edge of the stage. And I learned that some people will never see their own faults, no matter how obvious they are. My faults? Jonathan shook his head. The only fault I have tonight is that I wasted everyone's time trying to reason with someone who had no interest in being reasonable. Meghan turned to face him one last time. You really believe that? Why don't you? You actually think you're the good guy here? I don't think I'm a good guy or a bad guy, Jonathan said tiredly. I think I'm a talk show host who tried to do an interview with a difficult guest. That's all this is. Keep telling yourself that, Meghan said. I will, Jonathan replied, because it's the truth. Your truth, Meghan corrected. The truth, Jonathan insisted. There's a difference. Meghan looked at him with something like pity in her eyes. One day you'll understand. Maybe. Understand what? Jonathan asked. But Meghan was already walking off the stage. The studio was silent as she disappeared through the exit. Jonathan stood there for a moment, looking completely stunned. Then he turned to the audience, who were all staring at him with expressions ranging from sympathy to shock. Well, he said finally, his voice attempting lightness but falling short. That was something. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Jonathan walked back to his desk and sat down heavily in his chair. He looked at the camera, his famous smile nowhere to be found. I genuinely don't know what just happened, he said honestly. I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've never had an interview go like that. He paused, collecting his thoughts. The audience waited, hanging on his every word. I want to be very clear about something, Jonathan continued. I have the utmost respect for every guest who comes on this show. I never try to make anyone uncomfortable. I never try to trap anyone or trick anyone or make anyone look bad. That's not who I am. That's not what this show is about. He looked down at his desk, then back up at the camera. I asked Meghan some very basic questions, the kind of questions I ask everyone, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, she took offense to them. I tried multiple times to reset the conversation, to move past whatever had upset her, and she wasn't interested. Jonathan's voice was steady, but you could hear the exhaustion in it. I'm not angry. I'm just confused. And honestly, a bit sad. Because this could have been a great interview. We could have had a real conversation about her life and her work. Instead, well, you all saw what happened. He gestured vaguely toward where Meghan had exited. I hope she's okay. I genuinely do. Because that kind of reaction, that level of anger over nothing, it concerns me. It makes me wonder what's really going on with her. Jonathan straightened up in his chair, some of his usual energy returning. But you know what? The show must go on. We've got more guests coming up, and I promise you they'll be much more pleasant to talk to." The audience laughed, finally releasing some of the tension that had built up in the room. Jonathan smiled, a real smile this time, grateful for their support. "Thank you all for sticking with us through that," he said warmly. "I know that was uncomfortable to watch. It was certainly uncomfortable to experience, but we got through it together." He looked at the camera one more time. "We'll be right back after this break, and hopefully the rest of the show will be significantly less dramatic." As the cameras cut away and the studio lights dimmed for the commercial break, Jonathan sat back in his chair and let out a long, exhausted breath. His producers rushed over to check on him, but he waved them off with a tired smile. The audience was buzzing with conversation, everyone trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Some were angry on Jonathan's behalf. Others were simply shocked. But everyone agreed on one thing. They had just seen something truly unprecedented in talk show history. Jonathan had handled himself with as much grace as anyone could have under the circumstances. He'd tried to be professional. He'd tried to be understanding. He'd tried to give his guest every opportunity to settle down and have a normal conversation. And when none of that worked, he'd defended himself without losing his cool. The microphone that Meghan had dropped on the chair sat there like a monument to the chaos that had just unfolded. A production assistant eventually came and retrieved it, handling it carefully, as if it might explode. Backstage, the mood was somber. Staff members whispered to each other, trying to make sense of what had happened. Some checked their phones, wondering if news of the incident was already spreading. Others simply stood in stunned silence, replaying the events in their minds. The show would go on. It always did. But this night would go down in television history as one of the most bizarre and uncomfortable interviews ever broadcast. And Jonathan Ross, through no fault of his own, had been at the center of it all.